Welcome back to Rise Prime Time. I'm Charles Ikokwu, and this is the point in the program that I introduce our guest analyst who will give us her personal take on the news and issues of the day. And tonight I'm joined in the studio by the journalist, political affairs commentator, and a Rise News analyst, Dr. Constance Ikokwu. Thank you very much indeed for joining us.
You're welcome.
On a Friday as well.
Yes, I know. I'm itching to run.
I know. You're not alone. But, I mean, we had Honorable Obi Agwocha at the beginning there, who was very articulate and I think spelled out their focus in the National Assembly as an opposition and what the things that they're trying to achieve. What's your assessment of it?
I mean, you were able to cover quite a bit of topics, you know, with him, whether it was the Nnamdi Kanu, the opposition, the merger, the questionable buying of vehicles and all of that. But to the opposition, I think the starting point would be to say that any National Assembly that cannot get the guts or does not have the guts to challenge the executive arm of government is not worth its salt. Because within the House, for instance, and even the Senate, so they have the APC as a majority, the PDP and several other parties, Labour, the NNPP and APGA. You know, so like he said, they should coalesce with one another when necessary in order to form an opposition. This is necessary because you need a National Assembly that represents the people, that are not answerable to the president or the executive arm of government. And when this happens, you find out that it will promote transparency, it will prevent abuses from the executive arm of government. A healthy debate is also necessary because you want them to scrutinize policies and initiatives, provide alternative solutions, and not just sit down there. So in a situation where that does not happen, what you have is limited representation and diminished accountability. And, you know, for instance, you can also erode the foundation of democratic ideals. So what he's talking about is very necessary and important and critical to the survival of democracy. And I hope they're able to pull that off.
I mean, obviously, it's not that easy when you're sort of faced with considerable heckling. We heard it on that video there with the sort of the pressure and so on. But he did make a very important point that collectively the opposition is in the majority.
It's possible, Charles. It is difficult, but it's definitely possible. And you can look to the past, you know, where we've had opposition in the National Assembly. And sometimes we did have robust leadership, especially leadership. So, for instance, you look at someone like Chuba Kadigo when he was Senate president. It was short-lived, but he was a politician in a class of his own and provided the leadership. And then you had someone like Umar Galinaba, who was the Speaker of the House of Representatives, and he really gave Obasanjo a run for his money. And you know, I think President Obasanjo will forever remember that. And then you come to President Buhari's tenure. You had Olubukola Saraki, who also stood his ground when it mattered. So it's also about principles and values, about thinking about representing the people. If you're able to play the politics of going across party lines, going across the aisle, it doesn't mean that you cannot make decisions on bipartisan basis. You can. But when the time of when the occasion demands it, it is necessary that you stand up for the people and, of course, coalesce and work together with other people against the ruling party when need be, not all the time.
Now let's move on to Dr. Ladan Salihu there and his contention, even in the face of what appears to be evidence to the contrary, that the balance of governorship power seems to be, or the APC seems to be manipulating the balance in its favor. What are your thoughts on that whole thing? I mean, there's Kano, there's Zamfara, there's Plateau, and all the rest of it.
Well, if you listen carefully to what he says, he talks about perception. And this is crucial because perception is everything. You know, arising from the Presidential Election Petition Tribunal and eventually the Supreme Court judgment, a lot of people perceived or had the perception that the judgment was not right and that, you know, the power was taken away from the people and given to the APC. Again, that's a perception. You might argue it legally. And so that continues to, flow into every other thing, the governorship election petition tribunals that we are seeing. And that is why a case of Kano, that is what people feel. And also because Kano, for instance, is a big state. It's a massive state in the north. It's crucial for every party and for every political figure, especially the ones that are ruling. So I'll give you an instance. The former governor, Alhaji Ganduje, I mean, in his first term, when he ran for his second term, he almost lost Kano. And again, people thought that he eventually won it through the back door. So Kano is very crucial for every ruling party. And just like Lagos is also very critical to a ruling party. So whatever happens, I think what you see then is the chaos and confusion that comes from the questionable legal practices that we have seen so far. So people no longer have trust in the judiciary, and they are also saying that the judiciary should no longer be the one deciding who wins the election. No, we want to vote, and the votes counted, and we are the ones that decide who gets into power. So these are the things that we have to begin to address. How long should the judiciary be the ones deciding who wins the election?
That's a good point. But the fact, of course, is that if I run for office and I perceive that someone's manipulated the elections in their favor, as we've seen in many instances, I mean, I've got to have some recourse.
Of course, which is why you have the judiciary. But at the same time, I think over the years what has happened is that this is happening too many times, and also the judiciary is being overburdened and overwhelmed. You do not want a political system where, the courts become the ones that run the elections. Literally, this is where we are heading. You want to prevent that. You want to have an INEC that conducts election properly. You want to have a political elite or political class that behaves appropriately, because politicians are also part of the problem. And so if you do not behave appropriately and then you want the courts to decide for you, you do not want that kind of a political system. So again, we are faced with unsurmountable problems, and we have to address all of these things.
Okay, on that note, Dr. Constance, thank you very much indeed. You can go and enjoy your Friday now.
I will, and I hope you will too.
Dr. Constance Ikokwu is a journalist, political affairs commentator, and Arise News analyst. That's it for this edition of Arise Prime Time. Join us again next week. From me and the entire team here in Abuja, bye-bye, and thank you for watching.